It was clear that I was going to be a farmer. Why? When I was about 15 years old, I was an enthusiastic member of the 4-H Beef Club. I would raise a prime steer for a year, groom it, train it, and proudly show it at the big Eastern irrigation calf show in the town of Brooks, Alberta. And that year, my steer was chosen as the grand champion. And I and my steer led the celebration parade through the streets of Brooks that Saturday. My calf as grand champion was sold for twice as much money as the other steers. Safeways bought it. And on the basis of this, one animal could advertise their steaks as coming from championship beef. It was a rather sobering ending to the whole project, knowing that my pet would soon be on some neighbor's barbecue. I still have my golden calf trophy, though. I had my heart set on farming, except for two things that intervened. One, I wasn't good at fixing things. I may have been good at raising my steer, though my mother still occasionally mentions the fact that I quite often forgot to boil the barley for the special feed, and she would end up doing it, and she still claimed some credit for my championship. But I couldn't fix the cultivator, and farmers who can't fix things don't last long. My father put it into words. One day he was particularly frustrated with my dysfunctional hands. I think I was trying to change shears on the cultivator and was having many problems with the task. And the next day, I overheard Dad talking to a group of neighbors, venturing his frustration with me. He was joking, really, sort of, but the frustration showed through. In the Low German dialect, which seems to have a higher humor quotient, he said, "Jij, Gary, wat wil een confessor worden? Hij moet ondersteunen." Translation, that Gary is someday going to become a church worker. He's not good for anything else. Yes, I was too mechanically challenged to be a good farmer. Secondly, I love music too much. This was my plan. I would go to Canadian Mennonite Bible College in Winnipeg for 1 year to study music, mostly conducting, so that I could come back to Rosemary and be a farmer and conduct a church choir like my father had for many years. Ah, that would be the life. I could both farm and make music. Big mistake it was going to college. After being mostly a failure as a high school student, I discovered a love for learning at college. I especially enjoyed the Bible courses and the theology and history courses, along with the music, of course. And somehow 1 year became 4, and somehow this shy introvert who didn't really have a date in history became married to a fruit farmer from the Niagara region of Ontario, no less. But this still didn't mean that I was ready to be a pastor, far from it. Who to blame? I blame my mom, at least a little bit, along with my dad, who saw so clearly that I wasn't farmer material. Mom it was who thought God might have something in mind for me. Not that she saw any special piety or faith or gifts in me, far from it. What she saw mostly was that I was accident-prone, extremely accident-prone. From infancy on, I lurched from one crisis to another, any one of which could have, and perhaps should have, cost me my life. Stories abound, and Mom would just shake her head and say, "Gary, I think God must have something in mind for you. Otherwise, I don't know why he keeps sparing your life." I also blame John Jansen a bit. He was a neighbor. He was also my Sunday school teacher for a while when I was an adolescent. And one Sunday morning in class, he said, totally out of the blue, "You know, someday I think Gary is going to become a preacher just like his grandfather before him." Stunned shock. Total disbelief all around. No connection with the reality of how anybody else in Rosemary saw me, or how I saw myself. Why, when I joined the church choir at 16 years of age, another neighbor complained to the deacons about this, because of the mischief I created on his farm that Halloween. No one in Rosemary would have seen me as pastor material. Mostly my Sunday school teachers despaired of me for always looking for the opposite answers to the ones they wanted to hear from us. John Jansen didn't teach us all that long. But when it was John Jansen who was involved in that first episode of my accident-prone life. Perhaps it was my mother's scream that put the crazy thought about me eventually becoming a preacher into his head. At about a year old, I crawled out to explore the big tractor which John Jansen had just driven onto our farmyard. And then I laid down in front of one of the big hind wheels, perfect place for a nap, hidden away like that. Jansen was ready to drive on. Mom had no idea where I had disappeared to. But for some reason, she screamed. She doesn't know why she screamed. She's not the screaming type, but now she screamed. And for some reason, John Jansen heard the scream just as he was releasing the clutch and gunning the motor. He heard the scream and jammed on the brakes. The hind wheel of the tractor made a physical impression on my body, but I crawled away uninjured. I also blame Menno. I really blame Menno. By this time, I was near the end of my graduating year at Canadian Mennonite Bible College. Was married already, and Lydia and I had made careful plans for our future. We'd been accepted as students at Bethel College in Newton, Kansas, where we would take 1 year to complete our BAs. After that, not really clear, though given who my wife was, there were vague thoughts of something involving the church. Lydia had a very keen mind for thinking theologically, had a deep love for the church, and love forged through the difficult process of working through a major conflict in her home church. For me, if I was going to be involved in a church, it would probably be something in music I loved conducting. Menno it was who came to us on a Thursday evening, and just before I was leaving for camp in Assiniboia to lead a weekend workshop on music at camp. Menno was at that time leading the mission board of the Conference of Mennonites in Canada. He said to us after a quick hello, "There's a little Mennonite church near Sudbury, Ontario, Waters Mennonite by name, which needs an interim pastor for a year. And I think you're just the right person and you were the right couple to go there. I need to know by Monday morning." No time, no process, no real interview, no filling out a ministerial leadership information form, no candidating visit to Sudbury to become acquainted, no vote or invitation from the good folks at Waters Mennonite, just this totally unexpected invitation from Menno. And on Monday morning, Lydia and I looked at each other and both said yes at the same time. And somehow God launched me on a journey 40 years ago which I couldn't have imagined. Mostly, of course, I blame God. I don't think Mom and Dad and accidents and John Jansen and Menno acted on their own. For some strange and crazy reason, God was calling me into pastoral ministry despite all probabilities of me ever making an adequate pastor. There is a humor-filled grace at work in even imagining the next 40 years of ministry, let alone the love and the joy that